Greetings to all. We'll give about a minute, let the crowd build up a little bit, and we'll get started. Thank you for participating tonight. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. First, I want to say I greatly appreciate everyone joining this live chat as we're getting started. I'd like to cover the chat session disclaimer. This live chat in the Coatings Talk series does not represent the opinions or strategies of AkzoNobel International Paint. And additionally, I make every effort to provide accurate and up-to-date information from the global protective coatings and corrosion industries. Despite this care and attention, it's reasonable that content and chat conversations within the live chat might have content or information that's incomplete or inaccurate. Additionally, any recording or distributing of this live chat is not permitted without written permission of Jim Kunkel, that's me. And I am recording this session for rebroadcasting back out onto my YouTube channel and LinkedIn, and to also have an archive recording. Now, before we get into tonight's topic, which is standards frequently encountered by industrial painters, I'd like to explain how you can participate in this live chat. It's really easy. All you have to do is raise your hand. There's a feature there that says raise your hand. When you do raise your hand, what that's telling me is that, hey, Jim, I want you to bring me up on stage. I want you to open up my microphone because I'm going to participate. I'm going to offer some information, maybe ask a question or answer a question, or just get actively involved in the chat, and that's great. Additionally, there are different reactions that you can do. Please feel free to give any reactions that you want. And with that, let's get into the topic, which is standards frequently encountered by industrial painters. So what I'd like to open up with is talking about, what is an industry standard, and kind of lay out that foundation regarding standards that are used and frequently used by industrial painters. First off, a industry standard is an established practice or a reference document that's used as the basis for comparing or measuring quality of work that's performed, the quantity, and then also performance. Now, it is determined by a general consensus or agreement. It can also be a formal agreement where you're having industry groups that come together, such as SSPC, NACE International, AMP, as it's known now, and other type of organizations that come together and formulate a consensus document. And the consensus document would have representation across the industry. And typically, when you're looking at consensus documents related to standards development, it's a necessity, it's a need that is found in the industry to create this standard. With that, a lot of the organizations, you typically don't want to see duplication going on. So there has to be, at least in most of the majority opinion, a real relevant need for a standard to be developed. Now, in addition to having consensus standards that are developed, you can have standard-like guide documents, guidance documents. So there might be organizations or industry groups that pull together and have guidance documents that are used to perform just like standards as well. Now, when it comes to the development of a industry consensus standard, say, for example, something like AMP or another organization might develop, it can take anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And typically what you find is if it's a joint document or a standard where you have multiple organizations that are involved, that can take sometimes that 5 year, but it's not uncommon for it if you have multiple organizations pulling together to do, let's say, a tri-standard. It could take sometimes 5 to 7 years for development. And then how standards, when they'll go through a review process. Typically, it's every 5 years where they'll either be reaffirmed or they'll be updated. So it's very important that when you're looking at standards that you stay on top of revisions as they happen, to make sure you can look at what has changed and be always familiar of what's going on. A good document, in recent, let's say the last 10 years or so, that has had a lot of revisions is SSPC P82. And so it's always good to stay on top of that. Additionally, if anyone's on here and they would be specifying putting into project requirements or contracts or any type of project documentation for standards, you don't want to date your standards. You want to make sure you just call out the standard itself and don't put any dates. I've actually in the past I've seen sometimes where they'll put a date of the revision, and what you're basically in a way kind of saying is that you want it to that standard. Now that standard might be revised multiple times, like PA2, for example. So you always want to make sure you kind of keep it so that whatever the latest revision is, that's what people are going to work off of that. And additionally, with a standard, it does typically provide exact requirements, or it might describe a specific process as well. It often includes evaluation criteria to ensure that measurements are required, or I'm sorry, are met. And when I think of evaluation criteria, a good example would be with SSPC. And this discussion I have tonight will definitely be very based in North America. So, I've grown up and I'm very used to SSPC, NACE, and then ASTM, and a lot of the standards that are typically called out in North American project work. But often when I think of evaluation criteria, I think of the QP program, which is a program to qualify painting contractors, shop painting for blast and paint, inspection firms. It could be metallizing. There's a lot of other callouts for concrete coating contractors, different callouts for them to meet certain type of evaluation points to be able to be qualified and be accredited as a contractor. And then the big thing is you want to have them reference in procurement documents, and especially with the project, you want them called out inside of the project as well. Now, why use industry standards? First off is objectivity. The requirements are agreed upon between all involved parties. That's going to be the coating manufacturers, the suppliers, the owners, the applicators, the on the inspection side. This has, when you're looking at a consensus document, you're looking at something that has a wide breadth of representation from the industry, so that you are ultimately coming up with a document that is accepted as, this is what we're going to say is a requirement for this particular standard. And then the next thing would be consistency with a industry standard, that everyone is really reading the same language. Terms are defined, everything is kind of spelled out, and everyone does agree with that. If there would be any type of issues between what's said or maybe interpretations, a lot of times those are addressed in the project pre-bid type of meetings, and then before projects kick off, it's a good opportunity when you have those little conferences and meetings with owners and related to the specification, to be able to work out any type of terminology, language issues, or questions that might be there. And then the big thing, especially for people who are writing specifications, it's really a great shortcut for you to be able to refer to the standard in the specification and also in the contract documents without writing out the requirements. So if you have certain type of requirements you want to have, you call out the standard versus writing that out, and it just makes it so much easier for the specification writer. Now, in addition to the standards that are frequently referenced in projects, you're also going to have other referenced documents as well. ASTM, for example, would be sometimes mandatory parts of a standard, and also too, the reason why is that also would have exact language and requirements. It would also have, like for ASTM, you have its test methods and procedures. And then in addition to that, the one thing that I also do call out is that when you're looking at also these test methodologies too, make sure that you stay on top of those as well, because they can change over time as well. Now, let's talk about frequently encountered standards. What you're frequently going to encounter in projects are going to be surface preparation standards, and that would be standards for the abrasives, and that would be your AB standards from SSPC. Additionally, you're going to have standards for surface cleanliness, and those could be the SSPC and then also the SSPC and NACE joint standards. And then also too, you're going to have visual guides. There's reference guides that are used. These are going to be the photographic references that do an approximation of what a blast might look or surface condition might be. And then there might be, there's going to definitely be, application related standards. The one I had mentioned earlier, the SSPA2 would be one. I'm not going to really go into a lot of depth and detail about standards because we would be here literally probably all night, all evening, or whatever time of the day it is for you right now, going through all this stuff. But when I want to kind of just gloss over some of the standards and keep it kind of general and everything like that, and maybe point out some things. And then the last thing is with ASTM standards. A good example, ASTM D4417, which is a procedure for profile measurement. These are going to be frequently encountered particular types of standards. Now, when we're looking at surface preparation, the first standard that is always called out is going to be the SSPC SP1, and that's going to be related to solvent cleaning. Now, any solvent that can include water, it can include steam, it is acceptable. And the unique thing that a lot of people, if you took science, I remember the conversation about what water is the universal solvent, and water is definitely something that is used to clean, and so it's kind of an interesting thing when you think of the universal solvent of water, and then playing into SP1. Now, SP1 does say it has nothing to say about staining, and what you're looking for is you're going to be looking at the surface. If there's no visible oil, dirt, grease, then SSPC, if it's not present, then SSPC 1 is satisfied. Now, in the projects, there might be specific requirements for additional testing for non-visible contaminants, and that would be where you would use a black light, for example, looking for hydrocarbons, or you might do what it called water break tests, where your beads of water on it, looking for really thin films of oil and grease. And that you would want to refer to the project requirement when it does call out for other type of additional testing like black light or water break. Now, related to SSPC SP2, that is a hand tool cleaning standard. And then you also have an SSPC SP3, which is the power tool cleaning. But with SSPC SP2 and really with SP3, power tools are technically suitable substitutes for hand tools, but if a project requirements specify the use of hand tools, you want to have that discussion to clarify that there should be a discussion to basically clarify and to say, yes, you can go ahead and use power tools over hand tools. And noise suppression may be required for other specific limitations. Now, there could be no access to electricity or a compressor, so there might be reasons why you have hand tool cleaning versus power tool cleaning. And then the additional thing to look at when you're looking at an SSPC SP2 or SP3, if you have heavy laminated or stratified, what's called pack rust, where you have rust built up, often if it cannot be removed by SP2 or an SP3 power tool cleaning. There are other ways to do it, but if the rust is tightly adhered to the surface, it will meet SP2 or SP3 because a dull putty knife will not remove it. So keep in mind there's different types of rust if you have a pack rust buildup versus surface rust. Let me go here. Get my notes to go. Okay. And then, a question always comes up. I've had this brought to me before, related to SP1 and SP2 and 3. Can dirt and grease be removed with a power tool, for example? And you really need to look at using SP1. Now, the other thing too, when it comes to feathering, there would be requirements in that standard for feathering, and then also to dirt. As I mentioned earlier, dirt and grease will be removed from solvent cleaning before the use of power tool. You need to only clean areas with loose rust, paint, and other types of contaminants, but paint that is tightly adhered, it cannot be removed with a dull putty knife. In SP3, there is no requirement for feathering. And let's see here, SP11 is going to be a power tool cleaning to bare metal, and that has a minimum 1 mil profile requirement. there is a default method of profile measurement, and that's ASTM D4417 method B, and where you're measuring with a micrometer. And also too, when you're looking at any type of surface preparation that's done with blasting, you want to make sure with compressed air that the air is clean, and that's also accordance with ASTM D4285, which is a blotter test. You basically want to verify that the air coming out of a compressor is not contaminated, and you use a white cloth and you blast that air onto the cloth, and you look for any type of staining or visible signs of dust of staining and things like that on it. Now, SP11 power tool cleaning to bare metal. Now, tools are classified as impact or grinding tools, and impact types include wire bristle impact tools. And some of you might have heard of bristle blast. It's a trademark out there. It's a product out there. And then with this, feathering of existing coating is required unless otherwise specified. SP15 is a commercial grade power tool cleaning, which is parallel language to SP11. And also to, you're looking at ASTM D4417 method B to measure profile unless otherwise specified. And then tool descriptions and feathering requirements, they're exactly the same in SP15 as SP11. Let's see here. Skip over that. And then we're looking next would be the visual references. With the Viz guides, they're called Viz guides. So you have the visual comparators that are done. They're not to replace written specifications. They're really to be used as a supplement. They include photographs that have gone through a review, and I would call it a certification itself, that they are a close approximation to the conditions, and there's photos for each of those cleanliness grades related to SP2, 311, and 15. And with the, in addition to the blast cleaning Viz guides too, what I'd like to talk about the blast cleaning standards. The first one is going to be what's called a brush off blast, which is the SSPC SP7 NACE number 4. And in addition to that, you would have an industrial blast, which is the SP14 NACE number 8, a commercial blast, which is the SP6 NACE 3 number 3, and one that's specified a lot would be the SP10 NACE number 2 near white, and then the white metal is going to be your SP5 NACE number 1. Now, things to remember about blast cleaning specifications. Earlier I had mentioned, SP1 solvent cleaning is required before blast cleaning, and that's to remove visible deposits of oil and grease from the surface. You don't want to be blasting in that oil, blasting in that grease, because you're going to be spreading that and causing more contamination. The reference photographs are a supplement to the written specification. They don't replace them. And then a no specified profile range or specified abrasive media, only requirements for visual cleanliness of the surface. The depth of the profile and type of abrasive use can affect the appearance, so keep that in mind. It's really important as well. And then additionally, for the blast cleaning specification is that dry clean air is required for nozzle blasting. And that is a reference to ASTM D4285. And blast cleaning abrasives, when we look at the AB standards, they need to be dry and free of oil, grease, and that is determined by ASTM D7393, a valve test, where you have, for example, like a baby jar size with clean water in there, and then you have abrasives in there, and you spin that, you look at if there's any type of residue material, or is there visible signs of like an oil or a grease or anything like that showing up in the water. Blast cleaning abrasives, you're going to be also testing the connectivity, and then also no visible dust shall remain after blasting. So there are ways to visually inspect it for the amount of dust that is remaining, so that if you have too much, you have to remove that dust. Correct surface imperfections after blasting as required by, correct the surface imperfections after blasting as required by project specifications. So let's see what else we got here. We're going to go into test for abrasives. SP10, for example, requires abrasive to be dry, free of oil, grease, and other contaminants as determined by test methods found in AB standards 1, 2, and 3. As I mentioned earlier, ASTM D7393 tests for the presence of oil and abrasives. Now, AB2 standard specifies test for recycle. Oh, Billy, let me bring you up here. Sorry, sir. Yeah, I know you can add a lot to this. Hold on one second here. Allow to speak. Okay, Billy, you can open up your mic and jump on in. Nope, guess not. All right. Let's see here. AB2 specifies test for recycled metallic abrasives, and AB4 specifies requirements for sponge-based abrasives. Let me go over here. Sorry, guys. Skip over that. We talked about that. Okay. This one. I'm going to jump into next water jetting. Oh, Billy, let me pop you up here. Okay, you can open up your mic, Bill.
All right, you there?
Yeah, go for it.
Hey, how you doing, Jim? Everybody? Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go back to when you're mentioning all the surface prep standards, the SP2, 3, SP11, the power tool, all the way up to the blasting. One of the biggest notes to take off on that, just so everyone knows, I'm an independent inspector. And I deal a lot with this, and it's that they all still require an SP1 cleaning prior to the surface prep. So no matter how simple the surface prep is, it still requires an SP1 cleaning. And that's something that a lot of contractors kind of overlook here and there. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anything else on what I talked about related to abrasive blast cleaning and stuff like that when we're looking at testing the air and all that kind of stuff, and the abrasives as well?
Absolutely. Good point with that. Always do a blotter test. There's a lot of contractors do not use air dryers. The water oil separators on the compressors sometimes are just not sufficient. And I still, a few times a year on a random test, will get some significant oil and coming from not just the blast nozzle, but I could see it when they are blowing off equipment in their trailer, cleaning up. I see oily residue on the Chicago fittings, on some of their their manifolds or something, and just kind of look for those telltale signs. Even as a contractor, as a painter, industrial painter, blaster, look for those things for yourself to identify, because that could be detrimental, later on down the road.
Very good. Very good. Let's do this.
That's all I have for now, though.
No problem. I appreciate it, Billy. Thank you so much. Appreciate participating. So back in 2012, SSPC SP12 NACE number 5, which was a water jetting standard, was broken into 4 different standards, and it broke down to single cleanliness levels. A water jet 1, WJ1 for SSPC, and from NACE was clean to bare substrate, a WaterJet 2, very thorough cleaning, WaterJet 3, thorough cleaning, and a WaterJet 4, light cleaning. So this allowed to, instead of calling out one standard, to kind of go into it and kind of fine tune what was needed for the project. And so there have been standards like WJ from NACE and SSPC. On the concrete abrasive blast standards, I had covered a couple weeks ago the concrete abrasive blast standards, the CABs, and that's another good example of taking a standard and kind of breaking it down a little bit into make it a little bit more specific instead of a shotgun, and more of a rifle approach. I won't really go through a lot of it because I'm going to save these water blast cleaning standards for a different audio program. I'm sorry, guys. So what I wanted to do now, we're kind of pushing at the bottom of the hour here, and there's a lot of other stuff I could go through, but what I want to do is probably break this other stuff out later. I really wrote a ton of notes down here. Does anyone, based on what we kind of covered, I covered tonight, anyone have any questions on anything? Or is there any additional information that you'd like to contribute? You can just raise your hand and I can bring you up on here. If not, I think that'll probably be it for this topic for this evening. Okay, well, I appreciate everyone participating this evening, and look forward to talking to you again next week. Please make sure that you do subscribe to the Coatings Talk Insight newsletter on LinkedIn. Additionally, if you could subscribe to the Coatings Talk YouTube channel, I'd greatly appreciate that as well. And everyone have a good rest of your evening, good day or good morning, wherever you're coming from this evening. Thank you.